Every trucker laughed at Zack Whitman's strange convoy formation, a V-shape no one else took seriously. But when the FBI faced a deadly prison ambush, guess who they called? What happens next will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about discipline on the open road. The Missouri highway stretched wide and empty beneath the late afternoon sun, its cracked asphalt glowing with the faint shimmer of heat. At the head of the convoy was Zack Whitman, 67 years old, shoulders broad despite his age, hands locked steady on the wheel of his Kenworth. His rig gleamed with meticulous care, chrome polished for pride, not vanity. Behind him, for other trucks moved with precision, falling into place the way soldiers once did under his command. A rigid V formation slicing through the highway like a spear. Every Friday evening, without fail, Zack led his small team. 2 trucks angled forward on either side, one holding the rear, and his own rig commanding the center. To him, this was more than routine. It was discipline, protection, and trust in motion. He checked mirrors constantly, ensuring every driver held the line. A formation wasn't just geometry. It was a lifeline. Yet, on the CB radio, laughter crackled. "Look at that circus rolling down I-44 again," one voice sneered. "Old man Whitman and his merry parade." Another chimed in with a fake bugle sound, imitating a marching band. The channel erupted with chuckles. Zack didn't flinch. He'd heard it all before. The parade, the antique drill, the V of vanity. Words from men who didn't understand what it meant to lose someone because the road wasn't defended. 10 years earlier, his only son, Mark, had been shot during a cargo hijacking on a lonely stretch of highway. Zack had replayed that night over and over. The flashing headlights, the ambush, the helplessness. If his boy had been part of a convoy, shielded on all sides, maybe the outcome would have been different. Since that night, Zack vowed he would never roll another mile without a defensive formation. The only person who never questioned him was Reggie Coleman. At 72, Reggie still walked with the upright bearing of a soldier, though the limp in his left leg spoke of shrapnel wounds long healed. His garage sat just outside Rolla, Missouri, a second home for Zack and his crew. Reggie kept their trucks alive, fixing brakes, welding frames, fighting rust. His laughter was a gravelly rumble, his wisdom blunt but loyal. Together, he and Zack carried scars from a war that had marked them but never broken them. "Let him laugh," Reggie often said, leaning against a grease-stained workbench. "You keep your V, Zack. Some things don't need an audience to prove their worth." Still, the ridicule stung deeper than Zack admitted. Among the loudest voices was Damian Draxler, a 35-year-old hotshot who prided himself on being the face of the new trucking age. Damian's cab was crammed with the latest gear. Self-correcting GPS, collision sensors, even drone scouts he launched for fun at truck stops. To him, Zack was a dinosaur refusing extinction. One Friday, as Zack's convoy rolled past a rest area, Damian's voice came sharp over the radio. "Hey, Grandpa, you moving grain or storming Fallujah? Lighten up, man. It's 2025, not 75. We've got tech for this stuff now." His words were met with snickers from other drivers lounging nearby. Zack said nothing. Silence was its own form of dignity. But in his cab, a muscle ticked in his cheek, the only sign of how much the mockery burned. His son's photo, Mark at 22, grinning in front of his rig, hung clipped to the dashboard. Zack reached out and tapped the frame gently, a quiet reminder of why he kept the line. Later that evening, the convoy rolled into Reggie's garage. Fluorescent lights buzzed above as rigs pulled into bays, air brakes hissing. Theresa Hale, the youngest of the crew, hopped down from her freightliner. At just 28, she carried herself with a soldier's composure, short-cropped brown hair, sharp eyes, and a steady voice. She joined the group a year earlier after leaving the army, and though some questioned why Zack mentored her so closely, he knew. She reminded him of what his son might have become: disciplined, respectful, unwilling to bend to easy shortcuts. "You kept it tight today," she said, wiping her hands on a rag. Even with all that chatter on the radio, Zack gave her a half smile. "The road teaches patience. Let the noise pass. What matters is who's still standing at the end. Reggie wheeled out from under a cab, grease on his forearms, and added, "Standing or rolling. Same thing in our line of work." The garage filled with laughter. Not mocking this time, but shared among those who had chosen each other as family. Yet beneath the surface, tension lingered. Every insult from the outside world weighed on Zack more than he admitted. He worried about the younger drivers drifting toward men like Damien, men dazzled by technology but blind to the lessons of discipline. Zack feared that one day his methods would be tested, not in theory but in blood, and the world would see whether the old man's parade was a joke or salvation. That test was closer than anyone realized. 50 miles away, in a federal penitentiary near Jefferson City, alarms blared through concrete corridors. A convoy transporting high-risk prisoners had been torn apart on a back road, ambushed by armed militants. 3 federal agents were dead. 2 inmates had vanished into the woods. The country was rattled, the bureau on edge. By nightfall, news of the ambush would reach the highways, whispered through diner booths and radio chatter. But for Zack Whitman, still sitting in his cab and staring at his son's faded photograph, the storm was already gathering. A storm that would soon place his mocked formation at the center of a battle no trucker had ever imagined. The morning after the ambush, the headlines bled across every screen in the country. Federal transport attacked, agents killed, prisoners on the run. The details were grim. A convoy moving 4 members of a domestic militia group had been stopped on a rural highway, pinned between vehicles and riddled with gunfire. Backup arrived too late. 3 agents never made it home. Inside an FBI field office in Kansas City, Agent Daniel Morales rubbed his eyes raw, his desk littered with reports and maps. He'd been in the bureau for 26 years, long enough to know that panic never solved anything. But this wasn't routine. Intelligence suggested more attacks were planned, and 4 additional militia leaders needed to be transferred within 48 hours to a maximum security facility across state lines. Standard protocol wouldn't cut it. A younger agent argued for armored SUVs and air surveillance. Another pushed for decoy convoys. Morales listened, silent. His gaze drifted to an old report pinned at the corner of his corkboard, a yellowing file from the National Guard archives. Years ago, he'd read about a civilian trucker in Missouri who mimicked battlefield convoy tactics to protect cargo. The name surfaced again now, unshaken by time. Zack Whitman. "Old man's a vet," Morales muttered, pulling the file free. "Kept his drivers alive during a rash of hijackings in the 90s. Formations tighter than half our tactical units." Skepticism rippled through the room when he floated the idea. "You want to trust a bunch of civilian truckers with high-value prisoners?" One agent scoffed. Morales shot back, "I want to trust someone who understands discipline. Right now, that's in short supply." By dusk, bureau cars rolled down the dirt road toward Reggie's garage. Zack stood near his rig, polishing a side mirror when the black sedans arrived, kicking up dust that settled over the chrome. Reggie stepped out from the bay, wiping grease on a rag, eyes narrowing. Theresa stood by the tool chest, watchful, instinctively straightening her posture the way she used to when ranking officers entered a room. A tall, silver-haired man in a gray suit stepped out first. Morales didn't waste time. "Mr. Whitman? I'm Agent Morales with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We need your help." Zack studied him, silent. The younger drivers nearby froze, sensing something out of the ordinary. Morales explained the situation, the ambush, the dead agents, the need to move 4 militia leaders without alerting the enemy. "We believe they'll strike again. We don't have 48 hours to reinvent strategy. But we've heard of your formation." The word lingered in the air like smoke. Zack crossed his arms, his lined face unreadable. "You want to hide federal prisoners in civilian rigs?" Morales didn't blink. "We want them to survive the trip." His eyes darkened. He had already written 3 condolence letters this week, and he refused to add more names to that list. For a long moment, Zack said nothing. Theresa looked at him with expectation, Reggie with concern. Finally, Zack's voice came low. "If this goes wrong, my drivers aren't just mocked. They're dead men, And every joker on the road who laughed at us will be proven right. Reggie stepped closer, placing a hand on Zack's shoulder. You've been underestimated your whole life. You taught us discipline isn't for show. It's for survival. Time to prove it. The weight of the decision pressed hard. Zack thought of his son's photograph on the dashboard, the boy's grin frozen forever. He inhaled, steadying his resolve. If we do this, we do it my way. No shortcuts, no compromises. Morales nodded. Then let's begin. The next 48 hours blurred into a storm of preparation. Zack pulled together the few drivers who trusted him without question. Theresa took point on communications, designing a set of coded phrases for the radios, short, sharp, impossible to misinterpret under stress. Reggie worked through the night in the garage, welding steel plates beneath the rigs, reinforcing fuel tanks, disguising reinforced trailers as ordinary freight. Maps spread across the workbench, Zack tracing ambush points, bridges, choke points, dark wooded roads. His military instincts reawakened. He assigned each driver a role: shields, flankers, and his own rig at the core, carrying the prisoners. One night, while the others slept in the garage, Theresa noticed his intensity and spoke carefully. You're carrying more than this mission, Zack. You're carrying your son. He paused, the words cutting deep. He should have had a convoy that night. He didn't. That's on me. It's not, she said firmly. But what you do now, that's yours to carry. And it matters. Zack met her gaze, the quiet fire in her eyes reminding him of the young soldiers he once trained. A surrogate daughter, in some ways. He gave a small nod, accepting her truth. Word of the operation spread just enough to stir interest. Damien Draxler appeared at the edge of the garage the following afternoon, leaning against his glossy, tech-heavy rig. His grin was smug, his tone needling. So the feds finally called the cavalry, huh? Guess they needed an antique parade after all. He tapped the side of his truck. But if you want real protection, you need tech. Drones, sensors. I could run circles around your V formation. The bureau agents dismissed him quickly, but Damien lingered, tossing barbs Zack's way. You're risking lives on war stories, old man. Don't say I didn't warn you when your toy soldiers fold. Zack ignored him, but inside, the words landed like grit under his skin, sharp and impossible to ignore. By the second night, the convoy was ready. Engines rumbled in unison, headlights stabbing into the darkness as the rigs lined up outside the garage. The bureau loaded the prisoners into disguised trailers, chains rattling faintly under cover tarps. Morales gave a final nod. Zack climbed into his cab, radio crackling to life. Eagle 1, ready? Theresa's voice followed. Shield 2, locked in. Reggie added his steady growl. Rear guard in position. One by one, the call signs checked in, the formation snapping together like steel teeth. A deep hum of purpose rose in his chest, steady as the engine beneath him. The road ahead was dark, dangerous, and alive with unseen threats. But his convoy was ready. He adjusted his mirror, eyes narrowing on the blacktop. Let's roll, and keep it tight. Out there. Tight is the only thing keeping us alive. Engines thundered. The convoy pulled into the night, 5 rigs moving as one, the most unlikely shield the Bureau had ever trusted. And somewhere beyond the tree line, unseen eyes watched headlights disappear into darkness. The convoy slipped into the night like a blade into shadow. 5 rigs moved as one, headlights cutting narrow cones across the blacktop, their radios alive with clipped, coded bursts of communication. The Bureau followed discreetly a mile behind in unmarked SUVs, their agents watching but not interfering. For Zack, this was no longer a mission of convenience, it was a matter of honor. Every mile brought them closer to proving that discipline wasn't just a relic of the past. Theresa's voice was calm in his ear. Shield 2 holding steady. Rear guard. Check. Reggie's gravelly tone rumbled back. Solid. Roads are quiet so far. But Zack knew quiet roads didn't last. Hours in, the interstate dissolved into rural 2-lanes, the kind of roads flanked by thick pines and blind corners. He studied every shadow, every reflective glint in the distance. His instincts, sharpened decades ago, whispered trouble. When a hawk suddenly burst from a treetop, startling a flank driver into swerving, Zack's gut tightened. They're out there. And then it came. The lead truck braked hard as a wall of burning debris lit up the road ahead, tree trunks soaked in gasoline, ignited like a barricade of flame. The drivers reacted instantly, the formation compressing, engines growling as brakes hissed. Contact, Eagle 1. Theresa snapped into the radio. Blockade at 30 meters. Zack's mind shifted into combat rhythm. Shields hold. Rear guard. Swing wide. We punch through. Gunfire erupted from the treeline. Muzzle flashes cracked against the dark. Bullets pinged against steel plates Reggie had welded just days before. Sparks danced across fenders, but the rigs held. Theresa's truck veered, angling sideways to cover Zack's cab. Her side mirror shattered under a round, glass raining into her lap. Her hands gripped the wheel like iron, refusing to yield an inch. "I've got your left." From the rear, Reggie's voice growled over the comms. "They're trying to box us in with pickups. 2 on my 6. Zack scanned his mirrors, spotting shadows weaving in behind. His heart hammered, but his voice was ice. "Rear guard, push them wide. Keep the lane open." Reggie responded the only way he knew, with steel. He angled his rig outward, slamming a would-be attacker into a ditch. The crash echoed like thunder, headlights vanishing into trees. The flames ahead roared higher. There was no way around, no time to wait. Zack pressed the mic. "Shields, angle formation. We're making a hole. On my mark. Drive it like you mean it." The trucks roared forward as one. Theresa and the right flank driver angled their rigs toward the barricade, bumpers smashing into flaming timber. Wood splintered, sparks exploded, and the wall broke just enough for Zack to drive through the opening. The convoy surged, engines howling, heat licking their paint as they punched past the fire. On the far side, more headlights appeared. A pair of heavy pickups skidded across the asphalt, blocking the way. Men with rifles leapt out, shouting commands. Zack's knuckles whitened on the wheel. They want the center load. They know where the prisoners are. "Theresa," he called, "pin them left. I'll take the right." Her rig swerved with surgical precision, slamming into the first pickup's bumper. Metal shrieked, the truck spun sideways, and its armed passengers dove for cover. Zack powered into the second, his Kenworth's grill crunching metal, pushing the barricade off the road. Gunfire rattled, but the convoy pressed on, iron shielding iron. Every driver trusted the line. No one broke. Minutes dragged until the treeline broke, the dark road opening to farmland. Silence returned, except for the labored breathing over the radios and the hum of engines cooling down from the strain. Theresa's voice cracked, but steadied. "All units intact. Eagle 1, status." Zack glanced at his mirrors. All 5 rigs were rolling. Windows shattered, bumpers dented, but alive. He exhaled slowly, chest heavy with relief. "We're still here." In the rear, Reggie let out a laugh, hoarse but triumphant. "Not bad for a bunch of has-beens, huh?" But Zack knew it wasn't over. The ambush was proof. The enemy had eyes, intel, and determination. They had chosen their ground well and failed, which meant they'd strike again, harder. For now, though, the convoy thundered on through the fields, battered but unbroken. In Zack's cab, his son's photo rattled on its clip, catching road light flashes. Zack tapped it once with 2 fingers, a silent vow. Not this time. The convoy rolled deeper into the night, engines echoing through farmland valleys. Somewhere in the dark, unseen watchers would be reporting failure back to their commanders. And those commanders would be planning their next move. But so would Zack Whitman. Dawn crept slowly across the horizon, painting the Missouri sky in streaks of pale orange and gray. Zack's convoy had been rolling for nearly 10 straight hours, their rigs scarred but still locked tight in formation. Every driver's nerves were frayed, every arm sore from gripping the wheel through the night. Yet the discipline never broke. They stayed sharp, radios crackling only with essential codes, no wasted chatter. The farmland gave way to industrial stretches as they neared the state line. The Bureau's SUVs moved closer now, no longer content to trail far behind. Agent Morales leaned forward in his seat, his jaw set. He knew the enemy wouldn't let the night's failure stand. They'd strike again, probably with everything they had left. Zack sensed it too. He studied the rearview mirror, eyes sharp as a hawk. "Stay tight," he ordered. "They'll come at us before we hit the yard." The road narrowed into a two-lane bridge spanning a muddy river. It was the perfect choke point, and their attackers knew it. As the first rigs rolled onto the bridge, the trap sprung. A semi hidden in the trees roared forward, jackknifing across the road behind them. From the opposite bank, SUVs charged, their hoods armored, windshields blacked out. Dozens of men spilled out, rifles gleaming in the rising sun. Theresa's voice cut through the radio. "Eagle 1, we're boxed." Bullets clattered against the rigs like hail on steel. Reggie swore over the comms, his voice alive with battle grit. "Well, Zack, looks like this is the one they'll remember us for." Zack's voice came steady, unshaken. "Then let's make it worth remembering. Shields, brace. Rear guard, you're our hammer." Engines roared like a war cry. Theresa threw her freightliner against the barricading SUVs, slamming her trailer broadside to shield the center load. Sparks shot as bullets ricocheted from her reinforced panels. Another driver angled his cab outward, blocking the bridge rails, turning the convoy into a fortress of rolling steel. At the rear, Reggie bared his teeth and dropped a gear. His rig surged forward like a battering ram, slamming the jackknifed semi-broadside. Metal groaned, barriers shifted, and suddenly there was daylight. "Path open," he barked. "Push it," Zack shouted. The rigs surged in unison, steel howling across the asphalt, cabs rattling under gunfire, trailers scraping the bridge rails. Enemy trucks tried to close the gap, but the rigs moved as one body, covering every weak point. Zack's Kenworth, at the heart, pulled steady and unbroken, carrying the hidden prisoners who were the prize. One militia truck swerved, ramming Theresa's flank. She fought the wheel with iron arms, forcing him toward the bridge edge. Tires screamed, steel shrieked, and the attacker's vehicle pitched sideways, crashing through the guardrail into the river below. She steadied, sweat stinging her eyes, and exhaled a sharp breath. Still rolling. At the head, Zack called the formation tighter. "Stay in line. No gaps. They want a split. Don't give it." For 20 brutal minutes, the battle raged across the bridge and beyond, every truck absorbing punishment meant to shatter the convoy. And then, like a storm breaking, the enemy faltered. SUVs spun out, tires shredded from spike strips they themselves had laid earlier. The few remaining attackers retreated into the trees, weapons silenced, their ambush broken by sheer discipline and weight of steel. When the final curve straightened, the high fences of the federal penitentiary came into view. Guard towers loomed, floodlights still glowing against the dawn. The gate rolled open as the convoy thundered through, brakes hissing, engines growling to silence one by one. For a long moment, no one moved. Drivers sat in their cabs, hands trembling, breath shallow with adrenaline. For Morales, watching civilian truckers succeed where federal convoys had failed felt like a lesson he'd never forget. He stepped forward, clapping once, hard. The sound broke the stillness, and applause rippled from the agents, growing louder until even the skeptical younger drivers who'd mocked Zack weeks earlier found themselves joining in. Zack climbed down from his cab slowly, boots striking the pavement with heavy finality. He removed his gloves, his face lined with exhaustion but lit by a quiet pride. Theresa joined him, her hair damp with sweat, her expression fierce. He met her eyes and gave a slow nod. "You held the line like a soldier today," he said, his voice rough but proud. Reggie leaned on the hood of his battered rig, grinning despite the smoke curling from his wheel wells. Damian Draxler arrived moments later, having followed the mission from a distance in his gleaming tech rig. He didn't carry his usual arrogance now. He approached Zack carefully, eyes lowered, voice subdued. "I was wrong. Thought gadgets could do what you do." But nothing I've got on a screen could have held that line. Zack studied him in silence, then placed a hand on Damien's shoulder. For a fleeting moment, Zack wondered if his own son might have carried the same arrogance had he lived, and whether he too would have grown into humility. On the road, you don't lead by being loud. You lead by listening. You ready to start listening now? Damien nodded, shame replaced by something closer to respect. A week later, drivers across Missouri began whispering a new call sign over their radios. They spoke of the V formation with reverence now, no longer a joke but a mark of pride. Convoys began adopting it, a ripple spreading across highways as truckers remembered the night when steel and discipline turned back a storm. One evening, Zack's crew gathered, engines idling in the sunset. More trucks had joined them now, not 5 but 9, then 11, their headlights stretching in a line of solidarity. Radios lit up as Zack keyed the mic, his voice carrying steady and clear. This is Eagle 1. Formation ready. We ride as if lives depend on it, because sometimes they do. The engines thundered alive, and the V formation rolled once more into the fading light, not as a parade, but as a promise carved across the blacktop. For Zack, it wasn't victory he carried. It was the quiet certainty that his son's memory now rolled with them, mile after mile. This story reminds us that discipline and respect often shine brightest when the world doubts them. If you were in Zack's shoes, would you have taken that call from the FBI? Comment below and share your thoughts. And if this journey moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to embrace the journey for more powerful stories from the road. See you in the next video.